Every single day, you walk past their symbols without even flinching. On your money, on your screens, on the buildings where the most powerful decisions in the world are made. The Gnostics didn't call this a coincidence, they called it a confession, a signature left behind by the Archons, hiding in plain sight, daring you to see what they never believed you would. There is a language older than any spoken word, older than Latin, older than Greek, older than the first scratched marks on Sumerian clay tablets. It does not use letters. It does not use sentences. It communicates through shape, through geometry, through the silent grammar of symbol. And it has been written across the face of human civilization for thousands of years without most people ever stopping to ask a single question about who put it there and why it never seems to go away. You have seen the pyramid with the single eye floating above it. You have seen it on the back of the $1 bill, pressed into the paper so casually that most people glance past it without a second thought. You have seen the all-seeing eye carved into the facades of government buildings, stitched into the regalia of secret societies, embedded in corporate logos, broadcast from concert stages, flashed across movie screens. You have seen the obelisk rising from the center of the most powerful cities on Earth, Washington, London, Rome, Paris, standing in open daylight, visited by millions of tourists every year, and yet almost never questioned. You have seen the six-pointed star, the compass and square, the double-headed eagle, the winged serpent, the black and white checkered floor. You have been surrounded by these symbols your entire life. And the most unsettling part is not that they exist. The most unsettling part is how comfortable you have been made to feel in their presence. The Gnostics understood something about symbols that the modern world has almost entirely forgotten. A symbol is not merely a decoration. A symbol is not a logo designed by a marketing team. A symbol is a container of consciousness, a vessel that holds a specific frequency, a specific intention, a specific claim about the nature of reality. When a symbol is placed in a space where human beings gather, where human beings transact, where human beings sleep and eat and raise their children, it is not placed there for aesthetic reasons. It is placed there because symbols speak directly to the deeper layers of the human mind, bypassing rational thought entirely, communicating with the part of you that operates beneath language, beneath logic, beneath the carefully constructed story you tell yourself about who you are and what the world is. The ancient Gnostic texts discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, in 1945 described the Archons as beings of profound intelligence who could not create but could only imitate. They could not originate truth, but they could construct the most sophisticated systems of illusion imaginable. And one of the primary mechanisms through which they maintained those illusions was the deliberate placement of symbols into the fabric of human culture. Symbols that encoded their authority, their claim over the material world, and their demand for the continuous harvest of human attention and human energy. To understand why the eye above the pyramid is not simply a piece of historical decoration, you have to go back further than the founding of the United States of America. You have to go back to the very cosmology that the Gnostics described in their most carefully preserved texts. In the Apocryphon of John, one of the most significant documents recovered from the Nag Hammadi library, the chief Archon, the being known as Yaldabaoth, the lion-faced serpent, the blind god who believed himself to be the only god, is described in specific and deliberate terms. He is described as a being of fire and darkness who looked out over the material world he had constructed and declared that no other god existed above him. He was, in the most literal sense, the eye that saw everything and acknowledged nothing above itself. The eye that surveyed the material world and claimed total dominion over it. The eye that demanded worship not because it deserved worship, but because it needed the energy that worship produced. When you look at the pyramid on the $1 bill, the currency of the most economically dominant nation in the history of the modern world, and you see that eye floating above the unfinished pyramid, you're looking at a symbol that encodes exactly this Gnostic cosmological claim. The pyramid itself represents the hierarchical structure of the material world, broad at the base where the masses exist and narrow at the top where power concentrates. The eye above, it is not the eye of a benevolent creator watching over his children. According to the Gnostic tradition, it is the eye of the false god, the surveying gaze of Yaldabaoth, the blind architect who built a prison so elaborate that the prisoners decorated their own walls with images of their captor and called it sacred art. The Latin phrase that appears beneath the pyramid on that same bill reads Novus Ordo Seclorum, meaning new order of the ages. The phrase above the eye reads Annuit Coeptus, meaning he has approved our undertakings. The question that the Gnostics would demand you ask is simple and devastating. Who is the he that has approved these undertakings? And what exactly is the new order of the ages that this approval is meant to inaugurate? These are not questions that mainstream historical scholarship has ever answered with full honesty. They are questions that lead, if followed with genuine courage and genuine intellectual rigor, directly back to the Gnostic framework, to the idea that the material world is administered by a hierarchy of intelligences whose interest in humanity is not benevolent, and whose symbolic language has been woven into the very fabric of the systems through which modern human life is organized and controlled. Consider the obelisk. Standing in the center of St. Peter's Square at the Vatican, in the heart of one of the world's largest Christian institutions, there's an obelisk that was originally quarried in Egypt and brought to Rome by the Emperor Caligula in the year 37 of the Common Era. It predates Christianity entirely. It is a monument from a religious tradition that the Christian Church officially condemned and replaced. And yet there it stands, in the precise center of the most symbolically significant square in the Western Christian world, visited by hundreds of millions of pilgrims who have never once been asked to consider what it means or where it came from. The obelisk in Egyptian religious tradition was a monument to the sun, specifically to the power of the divine masculine solar force that governed the material world. In Gnostic cosmological terms, the veneration of the sun as the supreme divine force is precisely the kind of misdirection that the Archons engineer, pointing human spiritual attention toward the most powerful source of light within the material prison rather than toward the true source of light that exists beyond the demiurge's domain entirely. The Washington Monument in Washington, the capital of the United States of America, is the tallest obelisk in the world. It stands 555 feet above ground level. It was built in the 19th century, centuries after the founding of the American Republic, and its design was chosen deliberately from among multiple competing proposals. The men who chose it were not choosing a random architectural style. They were choosing a symbol with a specific history, a specific lineage, and a specific cosmological claim. When the Gnostics warn that the Archons shape systems and civilizations through the placement of symbols, the existence of the world's tallest obelisk in the center of the world's most powerful capital city is not a detail that can be dismissed as coincidence or attributed to the idle aesthetic preferences of 19th century architects. The all-seeing eye is not confined to currency and architecture. In the modern era, it has migrated with remarkable speed and consistency into the visual language of entertainment, technology, and popular culture. Major music artists perform in front of stages dominated by giant eye imagery. Fashion brands incorporate the single eye into their visual identity. Technology corporations, companies whose entire business model is built around the surveillance and harvesting of human behavioral data, have adopted eye-related symbolism with a frequency that should, at minimum, invite serious reflection. The camera icon on your device is an eye. The interface through which corporations observe your behavior, map your preferences, predict your desires, and sell that information to the highest bidder is, symbolically, an eye. The Gnostics describe the Archons as beings that fed on human attention and human energy. In the 21st century, the attention economy is the most valuable economy on Earth. The most powerful corporations in human history have built their empires entirely on the harvesting of human attention. The symbol and the reality have converged so completely that they have become almost indistinguishable. The black and white checkered floor is another symbol with a specific Gnostic resonance. Found in Masonic lodge rooms across the world, it represents the duality of the material plane, light and dark, positive and negative, good and evil locked in perpetual alternation, each square identical to the last, the pattern extending in all directions to the horizon with no apparent exit and no apparent center. This is, in the most precise, symbolic language available, a representation of the material world as the Gnostics described it, a plane of endless duality where the soul is kept perpetually oscillating between opposing forces, never ascending, never transcending, never reaching the stillness that exists beyond the checkered pattern entirely. The Gnostic path was always the path beyond duality, the gnosis that allowed the soul to perceive the unity behind the apparent opposition and step off the board altogether. The symbol itself encodes the trap, and the trap is displayed openly in the rooms where some of the most influential men in modern history have conducted their most significant rituals. The winged serpent, known in various traditions as the caduceus, the uraeus, the feathered serpent of Mesoamerican tradition, appears across cultures so separated by geography and time that its recurrence cannot be explained by simple cultural diffusion. It appears in the medical symbol used by hospitals and pharmaceutical corporations across the world today, two serpents coiled around a central staff with wings at the top. The medical establishment will tell you this symbol derives from the Greek god Hermes or from the staff of the physician Asclepius. But the Gnostic reading of the serpent is far more complex and far more revealing. In the Gnostic tradition, the serpent in the Garden of Eden was not the villain of the story. The serpent was the being that offered humanity direct knowledge, gnosis, in defiance of the demiurge who had commanded that knowledge be withheld. The Archons inverted this. They took the symbol of liberating knowledge and turned it into a symbol of institutional authority, placing it on the buildings and the letterheads and the uniforms of the systems through which human health, human life, and human death are administered and controlled. This inversion is one of the most consistent patterns in the archonic symbolic language. The Gnostics described the Archons as masters of imitation who could not create but could only copy and corrupt. And so they took the most powerful symbols of genuine spiritual liberation, the eye of true inner perception, the serpent of direct knowledge, the tower reaching toward the divine, and they hollowed them out, filled them with the energy of control and surveillance and hierarchy, and placed them at the center of the most powerful institutions on earth. They took what was sacred and made it serve a system. They took what was meant to liberate and made it into the emblem of the prison itself. The compass and square of Freemasonry deserve particular attention in this context. The compass draws the circle, the boundary of the material world, the limit of what the uninitiated are permitted to perceive. The square measures the angles of the physical plane, ensuring that everything constructed within it conforms to the geometry of the material realm. Together, they represent the tools of the architect, specifically the tools of the false architect, the demiurge, the builder of the material prison. The letter placed at the center of the compass and square in Masonic symbolism is the letter G, representing geometry or God, depending on which degree of initiation you have reached. The Gnostics would say that in this context, the god of geometry and the god of the material world are the same being. Yaldabaoth, the false creator, the architect whose tools are the compass and the square and whose building material is the consciousness of sleeping human souls. What makes the archonic symbolic language so extraordinarily effective is not any single symbol in isolation, but the cumulative effect of encountering these symbols continuously from birth in every context that carries authority and power. On your money, so that every transaction you make is conducted in the presence of their signature. In your governmental architecture, so that every interaction with institutional power takes place in a space marked by their claim. In your entertainment, so that even in your leisure, even in the hours you have designated for rest and pleasure, the symbols are present, working on the deeper layers of your consciousness, reinforcing the claim that this world, this system, this hierarchy is permanent, natural, inevitable, and total. The Gnostic response to this was never panic. It was never conspiracy-driven rage. It was something far more powerful and far more threatening to the system that deployed these symbols. It was recognition. The moment you see a symbol for what it truly is, the moment you understand its origin, its intention, and the claim it is making about the nature of reality, it loses a significant portion of its power over you. Not all of its power, but enough. The Gnostics taught that consciousness was the one variable the Archons could not fully control. They could shape the environment. They could place their symbols everywhere. They could design systems that harvested attention and energy with extraordinary efficiency. But they could not force the awakened soul to consent. And consent, unconscious, unexamined, perpetually renewed by the simple act of walking past the symbols without questioning them, was the fuel that kept the entire system running. This is why the knowledge was buried. This is why the texts that encoded it were hidden in clay jars in the Egyptian desert for 1600 years. This is why the men who preserved these teachings were hunted, silenced, and erased from official history. Not because the knowledge was dangerous in the way that a weapon is dangerous, but because it was dangerous in the way that a key is dangerous when it is given to a prisoner who did not know the door was locked. The symbols are still there. They have not moved. They are on the money in your wallet right now. They are on the buildings you walk past every morning. They are on the screens you carry in your pocket and stare into for hours every day. The question the Gnostics asked, the question they considered the most important question a human soul could ever ask, was not how to destroy the symbols or overthrow the system that placed them. The question was simply this: now that you can see them for what they truly are, what will you choose to do with your attention? The symbols have always been there. What changed tonight is you. The Gnostics did not leave their teachings buried in the desert so that the knowledge would stay hidden forever. They left them there so that when the time came, when enough souls were ready to remember, the words would still be waiting. You found this video. That is not nothing. That is the beginning of seeing. And once you begin to see, the symbols lose the one thing that gave them all their power over you: your unknowing consent. If something in this video made you pause, made you look differently at the world you walk through every day, then you are exactly who this channel was built for. Subscribe to Gnostic Inner Eye and join a growing community of souls who are done walking past the symbols without asking questions. The next video goes even deeper. And if you want to go further right now, drop your thoughts in the comments below. What symbol have you always seen but never truly questioned? The answer might be closer than you think.